The headlines are screaming about this case, but veteran desert groundskeepers already know the dark reality of having constant access to private properties. Just this morning, I was chatting with a friend about that mysterious property sitting right down the street from Nancy Guthrie's Tucson residence. Everything seemed completely dead since the previous occupants vanished, remaining totally silent while federal agents scoured the nearby crime scene, while investigators knocked on every single door, leaving relatives in agony and the nation obsessed. Locals claimed the residence stood completely vacant, merely a deserted building, offering absolutely zero clues inside a totally normal residential community. It was exactly the sort of dwelling everyone ignores, particularly in transient areas heavily populated by constant moving trucks. Leases constantly expire and new developments alter the block's layout endlessly. Which brings us directly to the core inquiry of our presentation. That neighboring structure beside her place actually held secrets, but federal authorities absolutely refused to reveal the contents to the general public. Local law enforcement in Pima County remains tight-lipped, and every insider who witnessed the raid is keeping those shocking discoveries completely under wraps. However, certain facts are undeniable when you consult seasoned crime scene specialists who dedicate their entire lives to analyzing these exact criminal puzzles. Experts promise that vital clues permanently stain any building utilized for criminal preparation. Without fail, these microscopic traces remain permanently trapped in the environment regardless of heavy bleaching, deep scrubbing, frantic escapes, or carefully planned and incredibly leisurely departures. Simply existing inside a room guarantees you permanently leave behind unseen fragments of yourself that are utterly impossible to pack up. Human anatomy guarantees this undeniable reality, which is why we are metaphorically stepping inside that property to explore every single corner. Instead of trespassing, we will apply rigorous criminal profiling and laboratory methods to solve the mystery presented at the beginning. If a vicious predator actually mapped out Nancy Guthrie's tragic fate inside those walls, their biological signature is definitely waiting right there for specialized federal technicians to finally extract. Before diving deeper, consider a quick formal disclaimer. Every detail shared here stems directly from verified news outlets, identified insiders, former police veterans, and thoroughly documented government press releases. Nobody is currently facing official charges or named as a prime suspect regarding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Our scientific breakdowns simply mirror standard procedural tactics for similar felonies, rather than representing definitively confirmed discoveries here. We are digging for the truth while federal detectives pursue identical inquiries. Section 1 focuses entirely on federal interrogations, beginning with verified intelligence breaking on March 17, 2026. 45 days after she vanished, veteran journalist Brian Enton dropped a massive bombshell during his independent digital broadcast. His investigative program confirmed that specialized agents were swarming the Catalina Foothills subdivision once again, bypassing standard patrols entirely. These detectives arrived fully armed with completely fresh angles to interrogate locals. These specific interrogation angles proved authorities were rapidly narrowing down their primary suspect pool. Enton explicitly noted detectives were grilling locals regarding a nearby dwelling whose tenant abruptly moved out right before the tragic abduction. The reporter chose his words carefully to avoid false accusations, which deserves immense respect since that boundary changes the entire narrative. He never openly declared the dwelling a confirmed crime scene, but rather verified that federal agents were desperately seeking crucial intelligence regarding the previous occupant's exact departure timeline. While completely distinct scenarios, each possibility carries massive narrative weight. Many viewers missed a crucial detail. The broadcast expanded way beyond a single isolated dwelling to uncover much larger patterns. At that exact moment, investigators demanded locals identify every single builder and tradesman operating around any unfinished structures scattered throughout the community, specifically targeting those critical weeks preceding her tragic vanishing. Authorities rejected vague descriptions of random foot traffic, demanding precise identities and verifiable personal records instead. Detectives insisted on cross-referencing exact personnel with corresponding worksites during highly restricted chronological windows. Such extreme precision tracking down daily laborer schedules completely shatters standard protocol, proving this was a highly calculated tactical maneuver. It strongly implies detectives suspect the predator perfectly blended into the community prior to February 1st, utilizing their daily routine as camouflage. A brilliant disguise designed entirely for stalking and strategizing and lurking safely in plain sight. Let the gravity of that sink in. Feds have abandoned generic inquiries and are relentlessly hunting for exact aliases right now. This confirms the task force finally left their blind data collection behind, aggressively shifting into a hyper-focused predatory hunt. They are tracking unique suspects operating during exact hours within walking distance of the victim's front door. This represents strategic elimination, proving authorities possess a razor-sharp vision of the perpetrator despite the public remaining completely in the dark. Section 2 addresses those highly vigilant local neighbors. Long before authorities targeted that specific residence, a couple of locals were already whispering about its strange vibe, which brilliantly maps out the community's shifting paranoia rather than just leaking police intel. Whenever locals report suspicious activity that perfectly matches delayed federal search warrants, suddenly, federal agents started drilling into the very details the local community was already questioning, proving that someone actually listened, placing that crucial tip atop the stack, and finally springing into action. Let us start with Aldine Meister. This woman has called the Catalina Foothills area home for almost 30 solid years. During several interviews with reporter Brian Enton, she absolutely refused to mince words. The folks right next door packed up and left, prompting her to practically beg detectives to sweep that specific property. She literally told Anton the residents adjacent to her property relocated suddenly. She reiterated how desperately she wanted detectives inside there. Whenever you spot weird stuff like scattered clothes, you have to report it though. That fluent English speaker apparently remained clueless. This was never just some random, fleeting worry. She practically handed the police a formal, urgent demand to look into things. Spending 30 years on the same block sharpens your intuition in a totally uncopiable way. You learn the daily pulse, memorize the regular vehicles, and figure out exactly which homes flip tenants versus the permanent fixtures. You instantly recognize an ordinary vacancy versus an exit that triggers major alarm bells. Aldine possessed a razor-sharp sixth sense for her surroundings, and her gut screamed that detectives needed to sweep that building. Crucially, she is the very same witness who spotted an unfamiliar figure lurking nearby, roughly 2 to 3 weeks before Nancy vanished. It was not a neighbor or a hired worker. This guy prowled the streets with a completely unnerving, unnatural energy. While missing his actual face, she definitely locked onto the hat he wore. She watched him closely, forming one undeniable conclusion instantly. The guy was a total outsider who completely stood out. She confessed to Anton that spending 3 decades in one spot teaches you exactly who belongs. Keeping both facts straight simultaneously, an incredibly suspicious outsider spotted roaming the block 2 to 3 weeks prior to the tragic kidnapping, an adjacent rental emptying out during that same time frame, one resident catching both giant red flags. Meanwhile, another local named Laura Gargano painted an identical picture during her conversation with reporter Brian Enton. Leased homes are rare here, but the nearby tenants vanished just days after the terrible incident. She was referring directly to Nancy vanishing. She realized the vehicle disappeared completely. Then, she double-checked her terrifying suspicions with a few friends down the street. Everyone reached a quick consensus that the occupants fled the premises, mostly because their daily rides were totally absent, while her surveillance lens barely covered her front curb and completely missed the target house. It recorded enough action to prove the atmosphere shifted. Without hesitation, she dialed the authorities immediately. You spot trouble. You ring the alarm bell instantly. Even if it feels like a total false alarm or a dead end, you still pick up the phone. She absolutely did. Now, combine those two testimonies, a vigilant local spotting a total outsider weeks in advance, someone who simply reeked of trouble, while another observer noticed the leased property rapidly vacate during the exact days hugging Nancy slipping away. Two completely independent locals catching on to the exact same glitch from totally different angles, lacking solid proof, yet armed with undeniable, real-life sightings. Then, 6 weeks down the line, federal agents finally started knocking, asking the identical questions those women had already screamed about. Do not call that a mere fluke. That is law enforcement finally trusting a neighborhood's raw intuition. Section 3 dives into the base camp theory. Right now, I need to guide you through a seasoned professional's take on houses just like this one. Because Bob Krieger is absolutely no ordinary, run-of-the-mill analyst. He dedicated almost 30 years to the Pima County Force as an elite tactical leader, skipping regular beats to command the actual SWAT team. His entire livelihood revolved around analyzing criminal blueprints, decoding execution strategies, and figuring out how targets lock down their territory, grasping their surveillance tactics while maximizing the surrounding landscape. The man knows the Catalina foothills perfectly. He memorized the rugged topography, the housing shifts, and the precise blueprint of how those winding streets weave together. Moreover, he sat down strictly with Parade to analyze this specific address in this terrible crime. His exact words regarding an abandoned building were quite chilling, essentially claiming criminals might treat the property as a secret headquarters or a perfect launch pad for their sinister crew. Operating there hands them the perfect alibi to loiter around the premises whenever they please. End of statement. Let us unpack that carefully. A solid alibi to camp out repeatedly. We are talking about endless trips, not just a single, fleeting shadow, but a prolonged stay, creating an excuse that completely bypasses any suspicion from the watchful locals. Tricking random drivers or anybody catching a glimpse of headlights or a flicked-on lamp. Simply put, a supposed tenant always has a valid reason to enter their own home. That incredibly boring, everyday excuse transforms a random building into an absolute goldmine for criminal operations. Krieger took things way past a simple alibi. He broke down their tactical superiority using brutally specific, eye-opening details. Imagine a predator lurking unseen right next door, using that empty residence as a personal watchtower to silently track every neighbor's daily routine from the shadows, memorizing exactly when folks left their driveways, especially poor Nancy. Just let that terrifying truth truly sink in about her. Over 3 decades, running tactical missions and solving cases across Pima County, Bob Krieger knows exactly how a calculated ambush actually appears. This expert recognizes the distinct footprints left by patient predators, meaning his grim assessment of this empty Catalina foothills home is absolute reality. Krieger outlines a terrifyingly methodical blueprint, detailing how killers leveraged a nearby vantage point to memorize an innocent target's habits before ultimately striking. This crucial element of perfectly calculated scheduling constantly resurfaces. What exact hour did she exit her driveway? And when did her bedroom darken? During which moments was the residence most vulnerable? When was she totally isolated? And what were her relatives' visiting hours? Nobody figures out highly specific details through just a quick glance, since it demands relentless watching. The perpetrators needed a hidden command post with direct sightlines, exactly mirroring the terrifying setup the investigator just outlined. Everything focused intensely upon a single target, an 84-year-old solitary resident following a strict daily schedule. Situated mere blocks from where federal agents are currently probing. Section 4, deconstructing a hidden predator's secret observation post. This brings us back to our core question, because if killers utilized that empty building to plot or spy right before February 1st, they undeniably dropped massive physical clues. That grim reality is factual. We are discussing pure laboratory analysis, which perfectly explains why federal trace experts deploy specifically to hunt down cellular debris. Every single person continuously drops microscopic pieces of themselves automatically. Microscopic flakes fall off our bodies at around 30 to 40,000 units hourly, coating whichever countertops or tables we happen to brush against. Strands carrying valuable root DNA naturally fall onto couches, weave into rugs, and scatter across the exact hardwood spots where someone paces or sits. Spit easily coats coffee cups and doorknobs, while unwashed hands spread germs everywhere after wiping a mouth. Plus, sweat quietly soaks right into the surrounding cushions, onto drywall, and covers whatever areas trap human warmth. So if someone secretly squatted inside that leased unit for just a couple weeks, they left a truly massive trail. This invisible grime builds up deep inside rug threads, settles heavily onto timber ridges, covers entryways, coats, glass panes, and endlessly sticks to dining seats. Within criminal investigations of this magnitude, experts classify those specific microscopic remnants as contact genetics. The scientific label tells you absolutely everything you must know. Criminals leave genetic markers not through messy bloodshed, but purely by breathing the air and grabbing ordinary household objects. You absolutely do not need a brutal stabbing to find it. Since just lingering quietly creates enough proof, any stalker who spent hours peering through the blinds would smear their unique cellular signature across the wooden casing onto the bottom panel and directly over the glass. Similarly, constantly resting in one specific recliner completely saturates the upholstery fabric with physical evidence. A suspect who sneaked into the pantry, activated faucets, grabbed snacks from the fridge, or rested a mug essentially stamped their barcode on those fixtures. Detectives hold one major advantage, with leased houses figuring out the exact small group of innocent folks who legally belonged inside is extremely straightforward. Landlords know every past tenant, and official leases establish clear move-in timelines. Authorities can easily question past residents, kindly swabbing their cheeks to systematically cross them off the list. Once police clear the innocent folks, the only genetic profile left belongs to an absolute stranger who had zero legal business hiding inside that specific rental structure. Laboratories aggressively hunt down that unexplainable genetic mismatch. Since the victim's house only produced a highly contaminated and frustratingly tangled genetic profile, just as the police chief openly admitted recently, uncovering backup physical evidence at a totally separate staging spot feels like striking gold. So let us review the genetic clues already locked in the vault. Authorities governing Puma County officially verified they pulled overlapping profiles directly from the murdered victim's residence. They found traces belonging to multiple outsiders, completely excluding the deceased homeowner and her trusted loved ones. The leading commander stated on record, "Our team feels highly confident that the killer's cellular signature is there." Unfortunately, genetic material pulled from handwear dumped 2 miles away completely failed to trigger matches within the massive federal registry. Untangling that highly complicated forensic web might easily trap laboratory technicians in testing limbo for 12 months. The sheriff mentioned bringing in a famous ancestry expert from Parabon Nanolabs, who previously cracked 300 cases. Listen closely, someone warned News Nation that despite massive uncertainties, the endgame remains absolute. Grabbing a solid genetic profile guarantees we will eventually unveil the suspect's identity. Section 5 explores chemical residues alongside structural impacts. Analyzing physical indentations marks our next investigative phase. Here is where the concept of a covert observation post suddenly turns undeniably real. Trying to justify or artificially reconstruct this kind of irrefutable proof borders on the absolute impossible. Whenever suspects desperately attempt to maintain a completely pristine environment, infiltrating an area for tactical reasons guarantees prolonged exposure, especially since dedicated perpetrators constantly revisit the scene. Deliberate bodily stances inevitably generate tangible damage. Shifting couches to secure better vantage points against that specific estate totally compromises an allegedly vacant parlor. Finding seating deliberately pointing at New York's residents absolutely screams calculated premeditation. Consider it historical proof. Those heavy fabric indentations left behind demand extreme industrial repair methods to fully erase. Investigators easily quantify the exact pressure applied to subflooring surfaces. Even thoroughly scrubbed rugs secretly harbor historical data, revealing exactly how extensively those heavy items anchored themselves. Detectives easily extract scratched evidence from timber or ceramic surfaces below glass panels, precisely where voyeurs camped out. Constant rubbing against window frames permanently etches distinct positional signatures. Therefore, any highly seasoned crime scene analyst instantly recognizes how these meticulously documented scratches starkly contrast with standard degradation across the entire estate. They narrate detailed histories, detailing exact loitering durations. Moving on to our third investigative pillar, synthetic residues and discarded snacks. Beverage containers and swallowed goods from prolonged staking sessions dump massive clues, including discarded shells and microscopic sweat deposits. Smoldering ash leftovers, assuming they actively smoked, rank highest among historically impenetrable genetic gold mines by blending spit profiles perfectly with extremely stubborn synthetic filters. Discovering tobacco trash inside a previously smoke-free lease instantly triggers massive alarms for our laboratory technicians. Any disposable canteen coated in fresh oral fluids provides easily harvestable genomic evidence. Lingering signatures extend way beyond intentionally abandoned items. Suspects unwittingly sacrifice enormous evidentiary treasure troves through basic eating, touching, and trashing routines throughout their entire stay. Let us consider our fourth critical pillar, which normally dodges mainstream headlines yet remains absolutely vital for federal agents dismantling elaborate infiltration plots. Olfactory forensic clues. Merely existing generates a massive aroma footprint spanning personal biology, cosmetics, and cooking exhaust. Such fragrant molecules deeply impregnate permeable structures around the estate, especially woven rugs, plaster walls, plush couch, and overhead soundboards. Whenever federal crime tech squadrons unleash specialized tracking hounds, those subtle invisible odors practically draw neon signs pointing directly toward crucial cellular harvests. When sniffer dogs suddenly freeze near seemingly spotless corners, they provide an undeniable map screaming swab immediately. Scrub that exact spot. The target definitely lingered right there, even inside totally sanitized hideouts. Canine reactions to faint sweaty ghosts expose the precise trails and hidey holes favored by the perpetrators. Uncovering rogue intruders the landlord never even imagined existed. Make no mistake, this hardly qualifies as backup data. During rigorous forensic sweeps, dog-guided scraping frequently unlocks pure genetic gold that naked human eyes would completely overlook. Furthermore, we cannot ignore bizarre neighborhood stenches catching the attention of sharp-nosed locals. Aldine Meister possesses a perfectly tuned radar for normality. Having occupied this community for 30 solid years, she intensely watched an absolute outsider. We absolutely must highlight that fluctuating domestic routines, unusual car rotations, and weird fumes leaking from allegedly empty dwellings perfectly catch the radar of a 30-year neighborhood veteran solely because she intimately understands the daily baseline. Her detective debriefings entirely bypassed basic optical observations. Veteran locals naturally transform into the ultimate forensic lie detectors. Given that their psychological map of neighborhood normalcy relies entirely upon countless years of quiet vigilance, detectives understand this brilliantly. Consequently, federal agents kept knocking on her porch repeatedly. Brief warning. Playback hits 2,520, so brace for heavy laboratory specifics. Every single concept I am pitching relies strictly upon professional breakdowns regarding standard hideout anatomy, rather than verified clues pulled from this precise manner. Whatever federal SWAT teams discovered inside remains strictly classified. Section 6 tackles the spying gadget hypothesis. Honestly, I must recite Bob Cryer verbatim right now instead of paraphrasing, meaning zero summaries. His explosive parade interview wildly transcends the basic stakeout boundaries we just thoroughly mapped out. His statement pierces a highly particular nerve, a revelation that, if proven accurate at the manner, instantly becomes the most devastating piece of structural proof imaginable. Listen closely, because an empty house hidden from nosy neighbors is the absolute perfect hiding spot for a spy operation. According to Kreisier, someone could easily tuck spy gear away inside the building or somewhere on the grounds, completely undetected. Hidden cameras and microphones secretly planted throughout the residence or the yard, totally under the radar. We really need to unpack that statement. Given the heavy-hitting credentials of the guy who actually said it, forget about random armchair detectives or online trolls chasing clout and making things up. We are talking about a former SWAT boss with almost 30 years policing Puma County, navigating the exact same turf where Nancy Guthrie resides and where this entire mystery unfolds. Avoiding the neighbor's gaze is exactly what makes an empty rental house a goldmine for pulling off this kind of covert job. An unoccupied lease property looks completely dead from the outside. Pitch-black rooms and empty mail slots raise zero red flags, making sheer emptiness the ultimate disguise. Hidden within that void, spy gadgets can run constantly without anyone ever spotting them, unlike a home filled with people. Let us look at what crime scene tech reveals about planting and eventually tearing out hidden recording devices. Taking things down does not magically wipe the slate clean, as yanking hardware down leaves behind structural scars. Securing a lens to drywall, trim, or window edges always demands some sort of physical grip. No matter how tiny the gadget is, puncturing walls leaves distinct damage, and plugging those gaps later still leaves them glaringly obvious compared to untouched materials. Patching compounds carry an entirely unique structural thickness. Mismatched fading and odd textures stand out instantly against drywall, while leaving raw punctures behind screams of a rushed getaway. When criminals get sloppy and rush, new wall gouges in a leased space instantly trigger red flags for crime scene photographers. Sticky glue tracks tell a massive story for undercover tech. Temporary video gear usually relies on heavy-duty double-sided tape instead of screws to stay glued to the wall. Sticky backings make slapping up and ripping down bugs incredibly fast. Peeling them off leaves a very distinct, sticky footprint behind, carrying a unique chemical blueprint scientists can easily map out. Running lab tests on leftover glue can quickly pinpoint the exact brand of gear used. This helps cops figure out if the spy tool was store-bought or custom-made, leading right into tracking the wiring paths. Plugged-in bugs need electricity, and snaking wires straight to an outlet always leaves a permanent trail of breadcrumbs, tiny punctures near the floorboards, grooves sliced through the paint, and ruined molding tell the whole story. Pulling out the cords won't trick a seasoned detective. And even Wi-Fi cameras leeching off the house current need a hookup somewhere. That tampering leaves obvious scars around the sockets for evidence teams to catalog. Bringing us straight to digital storage, most miniature spy rigs save video directly to physical chips, like tiny memory chips or basic thumb drives. Criminals packing up their spy nests usually obsess over grabbing the big pieces. Like the actual lenses or microphones they can see, data chips are incredibly tiny and easy to lose. A memory chip might accidentally stay jammed inside the shell while someone rips the casing off the wall. Slipping behind floor trim is super common, especially when the bad guy is scrambling to escape in a panic. Dropping a memory stick inside hollow drywall or letting it slip behind an air duct changes the entire game. Finding a lost chip hidden inside the framing could literally hand cops weeks of secret video showing Nancy Guthrie's actual yard, capturing every single time she stepped onto her porch or pulled out of the driveway. Those clips likely helped the stalker map out the horrific events of February 1st, though to be completely transparent, we still do not know if cops recovered anything. Federal agents are keeping completely silent about what their deep dive into that home actually turned up. My breakdown simply focuses on the standard crime scene playbook. Any solid forensic crew would be aggressively hunting for these exact clues, following the precise tactics Bob Krieger laid out on record. Chapter 7 focuses heavily on federal evidence squads, because the sheer elite talent tearing this place apart is what makes this so crucial. Federal Evidence Response Teams, known as ERT, are definitely not your average street detectives. These squads act as highly elite evidence gatherers, loaded with agents who master one extremely niche skill, ranging from computer hacking and DNA swabbing to tracking microscopic dust and breaking down unknown chemical compounds. Tearing through a backup crime scene means these pros blitz every single corner, swabbing all surfaces and cracking open every home utility network at once. Looking at this nightmare as a full-blown federal kidnapping, any connected backup house gets the absolute highest level of forensic teardown, never just a quick glance around. The elite evidence team breaches inside. They haul in blacklights, chemical swabs, high-tech tracking gear, and cameras, locking down the evidence chain right at the front door. We also need to talk about the hidden tech angle that the media has completely ignored. This involves the empty house, a spot any decent federal agent would definitely tear apart. Whenever a gadget links up to local internet, it leaves behind a specific hardware fingerprint buried deeply inside the router history. The hardware saves that digital footprint, which investigators can easily yank from the internet company using legal warrants. Suppose the place had a running web connection while someone secretly lived there, and their personal gadget hooked up to that exact signal. That means the hardware footprint becomes a virtual clue. Federal agents grab these service logs constantly during major cases, and the exact same principle applies to mobile traffic. If the target's mobile device kept showing up near that house for weeks, it definitely bounced signals off the Catalina Foothills towers on every single trip. Getting those signal logs from the phone company builds a precise timeline of exactly when a particular gadget entered a certain zone. Detectives can then match those digital footprints right against the established timeline of the crime. Detectives asked around. They grilled locals about January 11th and 24th, plus the days that creepy stranger was spotted roaming around. The victim's relatives actually put out a statement begging everyone to concentrate on 2 windows between January 31st and February 1st, plus the night of January 11th, which retired federal agent Jennifer Coffin Daffer claims was clearly the suspect's initial practice run, casing Nancy's house, testing her defenses, watching her habits and mapping danger levels 3 weeks prior. If a guy squatted in that empty house all January and his mobile hit the local towers on January 11th, both clues point straight back to one single person. That January 11th clue is definitely no minor footnote. When relatives team up with federal agents to spotlight a random night 3 weeks before the tragedy, it holds massive, undeniable weight for the entire open case. The retired agent's practice round theory perfectly matches the tactical profile that Keir laid out. A criminal does not just roll up and pull off a kidnapping. A predator scopes it out, learns the patrol schedules, watches exterior lights, and memorizes blind spots. You ensure nobody spots you while testing the getaway path. And January 11th was probably the exact night that Dry Run finally went down. Moreover, if a creep crashed in that empty rental all January to run a twisted command post, the January 11th events could easily be tracked using the exact same cyber methods they are currently throwing at the final days of that terrible month. Mobile signal histories absolutely never erase themselves. Every single arrival, snooping session, and exit is permanently burned into the mobile network, and the feds absolutely have the legal power and tools to grab it. Section 8, breaking down the biological cross-checks. Let us tie this whole crazy web together, from the organic clues and footprints to the camera traces we just broke down. Adding cyber tracking shows exactly why finding a second location does way more than just provide extra clues. It flips the entire investigation's foundation, especially since authorities already bagged genetic material straight from Nancy's living room. The Pima County Sheriff officially verified this shocking detail. He officially stated the organic trace likely belongs to the attacker, but it is a terribly messy, contaminated sample. Scientists are struggling to isolate the specific genetic markers, meaning this could drag on for 12 months, pushing cops toward family tree tracking. Experts claim it is solvable with a clean swab, heavily relying on ancestral mapping as the main strategy. They would dump the virtual genetic code into ancestry websites, aggressively hunting down distant cousins linked to our mystery suspect. The goal is to reverse engineer their bloodline until a living relative pops up and hands over a cheek swab. This exact brilliant method finally nailed the infamous Golden State maniac. It also caught the guy behind the horrific Idaho college slayings, proving it works flawlessly, even if it burns clock. However, there is an alternate route that totally bypasses the terrible lab samples from the victim's house, regardless of how many relatives the killer has online. That shortcut is a whole separate location, especially if the empty place next door functioned as a dark staging ground. If a psycho actually squatted there, set up shop, and watched her, that means the random house next door is no longer just an empty lot, but the terrifying birthplace of a calculated kidnapping plot. Imagine uncovering absolute proof of a monster hiding right inside that secondary location. We are talking about microscopic evidence left on tables, ledges, or anything the watcher touched while lurking for weeks. Suddenly, detectives possess genetic markers from 2 distinct locations, making the matching process incredibly simple. This case reminds us that danger doesn't always come from the shadows we fear most. It often hides in plain sight, quietly blending into everyday life. An empty house, a familiar street, a routine day. None of these guarantee safety. What truly protects a community is awareness, connection, and the courage to speak up when something feels wrong. The voices of ordinary neighbors in this story matter. They noticed subtle changes, trusted their instincts, and took action. That alone is a powerful lesson. Intuition, when combined with responsibility, can become a life-saving force. We are not just passive observers in our environments. We are part of a shared system of protection. This story also highlights the value of patience and persistence. Justice is not always immediate. Investigations take time, built piece by piece through science, logic, and human cooperation. Even the smallest detail, a memory, a sighting, a feeling, can become the key that unlocks the truth. Above all, it teaches us empathy. Behind every case is a real person, a family waiting, hoping, holding on, staying aware, staying compassionate. And staying engaged is not just important, it is necessary.